Good evening. Welcome to our Good Friday mini service and devotional. We, of course, are not filming in the sanctuary, but instead in one of the side rooms as a church. Good Friday is typically a somber service, and I know it might feel a little odd being on the other side of a computer screen, and I want to say that's okay. Feel free to participate in whatever way that God is leading you. I want to start off by reading our scripture for today. And it comes from the 27th chapter of Matthew. We're going to start at verse 35. Jesus has been tried by Pilate, condemned to death, taken by the soldiers, and crucified. And we pick up in verse 35, and it says this: "When they had crucified him, they divided his garments among them by casting lots. Then they sat down and kept watch over him there. And over his head they put the charge against him, which read, 'This is Jesus, the King of the Jews.' And when the two robbers were crucified with him, one on the right and one on the left, and those who passed by derided him, wagging their heads and saying, 'You who would destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, save yourselves. If you are the Son of God, come down from the cross.' So also the chief priest with the scribes and elders mocked him, saying, 'He saved others, he cannot save himself. He is the King of Israel. Let him come down now from the cross, and we will believe in him. If he trusts in God, let God deliver him now, if he desires him, for he said, I am the Son of God.' And the robbers who were crucified with him also reviled him in the same way. Now in the 6th hour of darkness over all the land until the 9th hour. And at the 9th hour Jesus cried with a loud voice, 'Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani,' that is, my God, why hast thou forsaken me?' And some of the bystanders hearing it said, 'This man is calling to Elijah.' And one of them ran and took a sponge and filled it with vinegar and put it on a reed and gave it to drink. The others said, 'Wait, let us see whether Elijah will come to save him.' And Jesus cried out with a loud voice and yielded up his spirit." Good Friday is the day that we choose to remember the crucifixion and death of Jesus Christ. It's an odd day to mark on our calendar because, frankly, it's one we don't like to think that happened. On Good Friday, we remember a day when all seemed to have been lost, when evil seemed to have won, when the light of the world seemed to have been extinguished and put out. Good Friday is a day that is not one we like to dwell on. Just this past Wednesday night, we had a Zoom Bible study class, and I was talking with the participants of the class, and we talked about the different types of prayers. There are prayers of thanksgiving, prayers of pension, prayers of just talking to God. But one prayer we might not think as much is a prayer of lament. A prayer of lament is a prayer that states to God that the world is not the way it should be, that things are bad, that people are hurting. A prayer of lament asks why. It says, we do not want to be here. A prayer of lament laments the state of how things are and asks for them to be changed. I don't know about you, but I lately have had a lot of prayers of lament. I think we are in a day of age of lament. As we look out in a world around us, a world that is not the way it should be, a world where death and hurt and pain exist. And Good Friday recognizes that these days do come. Because lament is a part of this story too. When Jesus utters those famous words, my God, why have you forsaken me?" He's actually quoting the first line of a psalm, Psalm 22, one that might be interesting for you to read this evening. Psalm 22 is a psalm of lament. And some scholars suggest that Jesus is not just quoting the first line, but instead referencing the whole psalm. Because they did not think of Psalm 22 with the numbering system that we have today. They wouldn't think, oh, the 22nd psalm. Instead, the name of the psalm was often the first line. It was the psalm that stated, my God, why have you forsaken me?" And if you read the whole psalm, you'll find that it is one of lament. The psalmist states that God does not seem to be listening to them, that they feel abandoned and alone. Their enemies surround them. And in the midst of this, they do not know what to do. They cry out to God for deliverance. Jesus, in stating this line, is not only naming the reality he is in, but also connecting that to the lament of others. But fortunately, in Psalm 22, and in the story we have, this, of course, is not the end. On Good Friday, we recognize that there are days where sin and death and pain seem to be winning. But we recognize that those days are not the end of the story. Psalm 22 ends in a place of hope. Deliverance has come. God has met the psalmist. And then, of course, our story of this Holy Week does not end here on Good Friday, but goes on. Still, that does not mean that we should skip past Good Friday. No, it is in Good Friday that we remember these things, that we mourn them, and we know that God is present with us. We lament our own sense and ways of bringing brokenness in the world, and we just lament the existence of brokenness around us. So Good Friday is an odd day to celebrate. But we must not forget in the midst of Good Friday who is the central figure. Jesus, one who came to love with us, to walk with us, and one who, although he did no wrong of his own, was condemned. And he freely walked down that path. And he did it so that Good Friday would just be a part and not the whole of the story. So on this Good Friday, remember the one at the center of the story. Know that your laments are heard because he is one who lamented himself. And know that while we do need to pause here, we don't have to stay here. In the midst of hard times, the rest of the story might seem far off, and that is okay. Maybe the most we can do on these days is just to ask God to hold us, save us, and to be with us. I encourage you to keep watching, as we'll have some music, some hymns typically sung on this day playing. And then behind me we have the Christ candle. Throughout the season of Lent, we have been extinguishing candles, and this final candle will be extinguished, ending our time today. But as I've said, this is not the end of the story. And I encourage you to join me on this coming Sunday for the rest of it. God bless you.